The Stanford DNA test was the first ever developed to systematically measure intelligence. It was developed by the French psychologists Alfred Binet and Theodore Simon and was first administered in Paris in 1905. Its main objective was to identify children who might have learning difficulties and who might need extra help in learning. The original test was then adapted by L.M. Terman of Stanford University, turning it into the Stanford Binet Intelligence Test. This new version was first published in 1916 and was updated repeatedly since. It was designed to evaluate abilities traditionally linked with high intelligence, such as verbal reasoning, abstract or visual problem solving, quantitative reasoning, and short-term memory. The test produced the best results when administered to children. Terman also introduced the concept of an IQ score, a value with 100 as the average. Where the Stanford Binet test typically measures intelligence in children, the Wechsler intelligence scale was developed to measure intelligence in adults. The test was developed by David Wechsler in the 1930s and focused more on everyday problem solving than the Stanford Binet test. It was broken into two different sections, verbal and performance. The verbal section tested information retention, arithmetic, and comprehension, while the performance test assessed the individual's ability to find missing parts, arrange words into coherent stories, and copy patterns. Each of these sections was given an individual score, separate from the overall IQ score. Stanford Binet and Wechsler tests were designed to be administered by one person to another person, but group tests can be administered to many people at the same time and therefore are a lot more popular. They usually consist of test booklets and you just answer the questions. They can be scored very quickly and often eliminate the examiner bias of individual tests. But they have a lot of disadvantages, including the fact that some people just don't take tests as well as other people, and for that reason, sometimes IQ scores are criticized.
A good intelligence test needs to be reliable, meaning that the scores must be fairly consistent and dependable. The easiest way to test for reliability is to give one test to a group of people, then give them a similar test shortly thereafter. Another way to test is to split the test in half, and giving the second part shortly after the first. If the scores match up well, then the test is considered reliable. Intelligence tests must also be considered valid, or its ability to measure what it is designed to measure. When two tests meant to measure the same ability are administered and their scores match, the test has a high criterion-related variability. To be a good test, it must also be unbiased to any culture. For this reason, performance and culture-fair tests were developed. To combat language barriers, performance tests were developed. Because they use puzzles and mazes instead of words, they are a better indicator of intelligence to a wider variation of people. One of the first performance tests was the sequin foam board puzzle, where cutouts were placed back into their corresponding holes as quickly as possible. The Porteous maze, a series of increasingly difficult mazes that must be solved without lifting the pencil from the paper, are a more modern method of testing intelligence. Culture-fair tests attempt to eliminate language use, but also attempt to downplay certain values, like a reliance on speed, which might vary between cultures. The Good Enough Harris drawing test scores drawings on proportion, correctness, and completedness. Progressive matrices are also used, which give the tester a set of designs with missing parts that they are tasked with completing in the best way possible.
Discuss the different types of tests, we can discuss the different factors that affect intelligence. Beginning in the 20th century, psychologists tried to correlate brain size and intelligence to not very great results. They only produced weak results, and though they were positive, they were still pretty negligible. On the other hand, researchers have found relationships between intelligence and the electrical responses of the brain and cells' reaction to stimulus. Heredity might also have something to do with intelligence. The phenomenon often studied with twin studies, where identical twins are separated shortly after birth at a very young age and raised in different environments. Though they were raised in different environments, they often had very similar IQ scores. Genes only provide a baseline for intelligence, though. H.M. Skills attempted to proved the importance of environment in his 1930s experiment, in which he sent a series of orphanage-raised children with substandard intelligence to a mental retardation ward for 18 months. After the time was up, the young girls' intelligence scores were raised back to the average at the time due to the positive attention they received there. The Milwaukee Project also used intervention to develop an experiment to help raise intelligence scores. Beginning in 1961, poor pregnant women were given education, jobs, and lessons in childcare in an effort to raise more intelligent children. The children in the experimental group were given special schooling for 6 years. In both groups, the IQ scores of the children far exceeded the IQ scores of the mother.
IQ scores have since been criticized for various reasons, one being that they can be culturally biased. In addition, most forms of intelligence tests rely on test taking, a skill not all people excel at. Another criticism is that they are biased against those without access to proper education. Those who score well on IQ tests are those who received quality educations in upper-class environments that fostered the growth of intelligence. In response to this, the Goleman Emotional Intelligence Scale, which evaluates a person's ability to control their emotions and recognize emotions in others. Those with a high emotional intelligence are better with working with people. People with a very high IQ score can also have comparatively low EQ scores. Finally, though intelligence tests have been criticized, they continue to serve a role in our society as a comparative baseline. IQ tests in children can mark out those who will need extra help and actually increase their chances of doing well in school and in life.